remember to do all of these things. But let me just say that for those of you who don't know Louise, your life has just changed. And those who are laughing the loudest have met Louise and know that she doesn't ever let go, because she's the most committed campaigner I've ever met in my life. And I think it's a kind of cause that we want to all align with, which is why we all are here this afternoon. Now, she keeps changing what I should talk about. And so she wants me to talk about the NDP this afternoon. Let me just say that all of you are incredibly IT literate. So I'll just invite you, because I watch it from time to time. When we were drafting the NDP, between the time we did the diagnostic, which is very focused on education, the time we drafted the final NDP, we did a number of things. And one of the things we did was an interesting animated graphic, the story of Thandi. It's on YouTube, and I know that the bulk of you haven't seen it. So I'm not going to talk about that. I'm just going to invite you to go online and check the story of Thandi, because it's a story of Thandi that is what convenes us all here, because the story of Thandi is basically a story of a young girl born into poverty, goes through school, and continues in poverty. It's a story of intergenerational poverty, and part of what we need to understand is why that happens and how to begin to break the cycle. And Partners for Possibility is about breaking that cycle. That's the one reason why we convene. That's the one reason why we have an interest in it. So I don't want to bore you with a lot of detail, because I'm sure that before you got here this afternoon, there was something or somebody that motivated you to get here. Now, each year, ritually, early Jan, around the 5th of Jan, we celebrate matric results. Everybody is excited about matric results. The press writes about the pass rate. The press writes about how many people got bachelor's passes, but there isn't actually much analysis of the detail. And part of what we need to understand is, in fact, what those numbers represent, because these are aggregate 62.4% pass rate, 35% bachelor's pass, but that doesn't tell much of a story. The story actually lies beneath that. It's about who passes, the percentages of people who get through school, and overall, the ability to change South Africa on an ongoing basis. And that's a story that I think we must get into. And part of what we'll understand very quickly is that those who sit the grade 12 exams are probably only about 50% of those who started at the same time. And when we understand that, not just as a statistic, but as the reality, then I think it compels all of us as leaders in own name and right to engage with that reality. What has happened to the other people? And I needn't tell you that the bulk of those who drop out between grades 7 and 11. So it's quite important that we try and understand the issues. It's also quite important that we give a bit of attention to who passes and who passes well. And the reality of South Africa, certainly with the grade 12 results this year, are that all of the shadow of history, which is marked by race, class, and geography, are still very much present in who gets through school and who is equipped to get to university. There's another debate that happens once people have passed and could be accepted into university about the ability of parents to afford, and the entire fees must fall, and that is a separate debate, but not for this afternoon. The key issue, though, is that too many people are tripped up And I'm saying that the shadow of history is still very much present in who gets through school and who doesn't. It's also important to recognize that not just do we have the grade 12 results, and that waits until very late in the day, because once people have kind of dropped out there, they've forgotten. But there are a series of comparators that help us understand what happens in the schooling system. Some of these are resisted, and I'll say something about that. But amongst the comparative tests is one called PEARLS. It's a progressivity in international reading and literacy, PEARLS. There's also SACMEC, which is a Southern African quality of education report. And then there's TIMS, which relates to the teaching of maths and science. Now, according to a SACMEC analysis done a few years ago, and when I say geography, it's to SACMEC that we look for geography, and they looked at grade 6, and one of the things that they found was that 41% of rural learners, rural grade 6 learners, 41% are functionally illiterate, compared to 13% in the urban environment. Now, what I hope that we will all do this afternoon is sign up to participate. But I'm sure that the bulk of us will sign up to participate close to home in the urban environment. But the bigger challenge is in the rural environment. And so part of the conscience that we should all have is that whilst we enjoy reasonably good lives, there are people whose life is snuffed out by intergenerational poverty, which is defined by geography, gender, and race in the main. Now, the challenge of education, I think it's evident from the slides that Louise had presented, is an enormous challenge. We've got about 12.3 million young people in school in this country, 386,000 teachers, 27,000 schools, of which 6,000 are high schools. 27,000 schools. How many schools are you active in now, Louise?
462.
462. So I think there's a huge gap. But even if you remove from that list the sort of former Model C schools that are pretty well endowed in the main, and some independent schools exceedingly well endowed, you still have a large chunk of schools. Each one of them is a cost center. Each one of them employs probably around 40 or so teachers, each one of them. Well, there are about 30% of our schools that are still schools that can't collect fees, that have to raise the fees, collect them, and allocate the resource. And even for the rest, where sums are transferred by the provincial department to the school, that money needs to be allocated. And there are all kinds of challenges. And so I meet a principal of a technical high school in Mitchell's Plain in Cape Town, where I spend a bit of time, and he says, technical high school has all kinds of equipment, welding equipment and band saws and this, that, and the other. And the money transferred by the department to this no-fee technical school covers about 40% of the electricity. Now, these are very real challenges because we stand back and frequently we are judgmental about what happens in the school, failing to understand just the day-to-day challenges that confront those who manage the schools. I said grade 12 waits a very long time to resolve the matter. In fact, a lot of activity needs to go into primary schools. And sometimes on some of the issues, yes, there are unions, and yes, there is pushback. And you know, I think we would all be much better off if they could reintroduce the annual national assessments that allow us to understand, all of us as South Africans to understand what actually happens with teaching, because there's a language and a quantitative exercise. But it's very difficult because across the world, not a uniquely SADTU issue and certainly not a uniquely South African issue, across the world, teachers resist outside evaluation and assessment. I believe that, and I've seen evidence of this, I've seen it through Partners for Possibility, that when people are embraced and trusted and supported, they begin to respond very differently. Now, one of the issues that does happen in the country is that there is the National Education Partnership Collaboration Trust, which is co-chaired by Sizwe Nxasana and Minister Angie Motshekga. And they've collected a large amount of money from big business, and they have people deployed in the most dysfunctional districts, and they work through issues. And sometimes there's a learning out of that. Somebody who was working in this environment whispered to me, he met a grade 6 teacher who learned to trust him a bit, and he asked her then about the ANA results, and she said, no, they're very bad. She said, put them on the table, let's talk about them. And she showed them, and he said, but these are really, really bad. Maths, your maths is like, you can't reach 20% pass rate of a test as basic as this. This is very bad. And she said, well, yes, it is bad, but, you know, we struggle and the children struggle. And he said to her, but if you were to write the same test, would you pass? And now the trust that he'd built up was starting to come apart at the seams. And she said to him, okay, don't tell anybody, but in truth, I won't pass. But SADTU won't let me be fired for not knowing this work. So it's a big, big issue. It's a big, big issue, and there are big barriers created. And it's quite important that we, in our everyday engagement, can break through these barriers and be able to talk through. Now, that's the 2 minutes. You know, these people really bully you. The truth of the matter is that whilst the National Education Collaboration Partnership Trust operates at a macro level, a lot of the breakdown of resistance and the creation of friendships actually happens in interaction. And that's where I think that Partnership for Possibility and Partners for Possibility creates an entirely new approach. And it's in this that, and I'm sure that Louise will beat a big drum, or somebody will beat a big drum that says, you know, we need volunteers. And Mandisa called me this morning and she said, can I come this afternoon? I said, yes, but you come, Mandisa, bring yourself, but also go back to that green place across the road and say, all right, now we need many, many volunteers to go out and then work with partners. Because that is what this afternoon is about. It's about enlarging the number of partnerships so that we can attack the problem at its root. And in that engagement, some of the people I've spoken to who go in as part of this process say, it's amazing how much we know about management when we aren't the MD of a company. We actually know a hell of a lot of stuff, and now we have an opportunity to share it with people. At the same time, when it comes to the hardcore issues of pedagogy, people say it's surprising how little I know. And so the idea, okay, I'm rapping. The next is not a page, it's a kiri, so I'll rap. No, I think that it's about the opportunity for people in employ to learn in the school environment and to feel amazingly good about that sharing and to energize schools. Some of the stuff we'd learned from principals and teachers before is truly amazing, and some of the stories that business people tell is even more amazing. So I want to leave it there and say that this is an enormous opportunity to make a difference, not to whinge, to make a difference. And so hopefully by the time we leave here, in about 1 hour and 45 minutes, by the time we all leave here this afternoon, we'll feel very differently about ourselves, about the country, and about the opportunity we have to be active citizens and make a difference.